probably get asked more about like cold outreach than anything else. Like, how do I message strangers one at a time and drum up business? I think it's the least efficient way ever invented. When most people have AI, they try to go from here to final answer in a single prompt, and it just doesn't work like that way. But people who produce stuff, in many ways, this is the closest thing to a silver bullet you've ever been handed to in your lifetime. The people who use AI, but are also real people and not afraid to show themselves out there, I think are the ones who are going to ultimately like have a real advantage.
Hey, and welcome to the 91 Day Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mast, and I'm thrilled to have with me a repeat guest, Frankie Finn. Man, Frankie, you and I have been talking a lot over the last year, and our conversations have evolved a little bit over time. And I know probably most recently we were talking down in Mexico, and you were sharing some of the just really cool stuff you're doing with AI as it relates to marketing and sales and that type of stuff. For those that don't know who you are, before we dive into the AI stuff, Frankie, tell us a little bit about yourself and obviously the beautiful area that you live in, because I'm jealous. But tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the AI stuff. So, for those that don't know Frankie, the Frankie Finn, here's Frankie.
Yeah. For those of you guys who don't know me, I mean, I guess I started a digital marketing agency back in 2007. So I've been doing this almost 20 years, and probably for about the last 6 or 7, how most people know me in this world is I'm the guy who helps other agency owners and have written a best-selling book. But a lot of people know me as the guy who, like, we close all our sales in videos. For whatever reason, that's a thing that people most kind of remember, is that we've like done a lot of loom closing. But I'm just a guy. I got kids, you know, like I'm a regular guy who's just figured out a couple of businessy things that I enjoy sharing.
Well, I love that. I love that. And I know you've got some exciting things going on for you. You've got a brand new book that's launching. In fact, we're pre-recording this. By the time this goes live, the book will be available to be out there. Is that your second book, Frankie? I know I've got one of yours. Is that your second?
Yeah, it is the second book. This is like the next evolution. And it started actually with something that Ilke and I were more just less like dreaming about 8 years ago. So it was like not a big reality then, but it is becoming more of a reality every day. And the book is called Passive Automated Recurring Income. And it started as a mantra of ours. And when I started the mantra, I had exactly 0 of it, but I'm happy to report that is no longer the case today.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's so cool. Well, I'm excited to chat. So when we were down in Mexico recently, we were talking about some really cool ways you're using AI to find information about prospects, things you're using, Perplexity and other tools like that. You're automating some things. Tell us a little bit. How have you, as a coach who's helping other businesses and other agencies specifically grow, how are you leveraging AI nowadays, and what are some of the newest and coolest things that you've been discovering of ways to bring AI in and help automate some of those rudimentary and repeatable tasks?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, like a problem that we experienced before the introduction of AI is like, you know, when you help an audience of people, they all have really similar problems, but there's like the specifics always like matter to them. So like, for example, you mentioned like, you know, we've been building some of the bots. One of the things that I've been working on is I probably get asked more about like cold outreach than anything else. Like, how do I message strangers one at a time and drum up business? And I'm not against it, but I literally think it's the least efficient way ever invented. It's the most manual and arduous, and like
Absolutely.
people reject you a lot. And so what I've been showing people for a lot of years is like, find the people who already have audiences and have established credibility, and speak directly to the audience owner and co-create stuff, and they'll put you in front of people. And so I experienced this for a lot of years. Like I spent like 7 years, or should I say 7 years ago, before COVID, I spent a lot of time in the legal space speaking on stage. And every time you speak on stage, when you walk off stage, there's 5, 10, 15, 20, sometimes as many as like 50 or 100 people who want to talk to you about what you do. And it makes life a lot easier when you can do that. So I figured this out years ago, that like instead of cold messaging people one at a time, add value to the audience owner and they'll share your stuff. And they've often spent like 10, 20 years doing the credibility. Well, even still, like there's a lot of manual work in that, like pre-AI, where, okay, you have to research on Google, like who's got an audience. So who runs the mastermind, who runs the conference, who puts out the software and the tool. And when you do that manual search, one of the things that I've shown people, like, I believe, especially if you're not trying to do like a volume numbers game, it makes a lot more sense. like I compare it to like if you ever been to a doctor and he's got a good assistant, every assistant hands him a file that's personalized about you. And it says
Yep.
you got 3 kids, you live in Mexico, you live on the beach. Last time I talked to you, you're about to launch a new book. And so I could immediately open the conversation by going, how's your new book? How are the kids? How's Mexico? How's life? Like I have so many different ways to like start a conversation with you when I'm handed that file. And so we've been sort of more or less digitally creating these files. And now we've got at the point with AI, it's really just a lot of mundane research. You click on the person's website, you look up their socials, you see what they're publishing, you click on their About Us page and you read a little bit about them. But we can click a button now and like output that into a spreadsheet and go, this is Dave, he runs the conference, these are the last 5 things he's published, this is a little bit about him, this is how many years he's been doing it, blah, blah, blah. And you immediately get this digital file where now talking to Dave is much easier because Dave is not just a name and a face in a crowd where you're trying to say some magic line. I can talk about his kids, his family, what he's working on, all those things. And then it makes it very easy to open a conversation. And then we have sort of set formulas. And I've been now like next generation is we've been also creating AI tools to then write those people because again, I have like a formula that like I would say it's a framework more than anything where I'm saying the same things over and over, but every time it's a little bit different, personalized to that person. And so AI is very, very useful. And then we can feed it that file and say, can you write an outreach message to that person? And what we found is like, I think a lot of people experience this when we tried using like ChatGPT, for example, out of the box. It just like they copied what everybody else was doing, which was no good. And I knew it didn't work because I have people come to me every day and say, I'm doing this.
Exactly.
And so, it works off of its knowledge base, which is largely based on what everyone else is doing. So we fed it our example frameworks and just like gave it a whole like Google Doc of like, this is how you do it. And like even little details, like one of the things is I'll often start and say, hey, Jonathan, saw your group has now hit like over 200,000 people. Like, that's awesome. That might be an opening message I start. And it would want to write it to, I saw that you did blah, blah, blah. And I find that like then it all of a sudden makes the message about you, which they don't care about. I want to talk, if I'm messaging Jonathan, I want it to be about you. So we even trained it on those little details of like, no, like make this thing about them and what they're going to get and why it's cool and why we look them up and why they're interesting, why we want to talk to them and why we legitimately have something valuable to add to their audience. And in doing so, we can go from like you just entered a niche to like click a couple of buttons. These are all the relevant people. Now let's start messaging them and like do that in under 2 minutes. And that used to that process has worked for us for a long time, but it used to take like 3-4 days of a VA doing manual research. And as many of you guys, like a lot of times they can't find what they're looking for. And then inevitably people struggle with messaging. Even when they give them a framework, they go, what should I say in this case? And AI like can figure that out with a good set of instructions. And so to me, and then we're trying to take this all the way through the agency. I haven't like fully got there, but we now have onboarding swipe files, so you can just like type in, this is what I do, this is how long I've been doing it, and it'll again personalize. These are the welcome message we've used. These are the client updates we give, and so like again, AI generates that in minutes. So now you know what you're going to say to clients after they join your program to keep them excited and moving forward. And then the next piece of the puzzle, which is probably like a 3 to 6 month project. But I want to get like a giant library of operating procedures so that anytime you bring somebody into your team and you want to get them up to speed on how to do something, like you have a detailed set of instructions that person can work through like a checklist, almost like a franchise would, and be able to do all of that in like under 2 minutes. So like it's pretty exciting times. And I've really only kind of like stayed in that narrow range of like, how do I take a manual agency process that works and strap AI to do it like 100 times faster? Or maybe like 100,000 times faster in some instances. But that's
what I was going to say
on that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going from days down to minutes now to make this happen, and you said a lot of things that I think are really relevant. One of them is that you've trained the AI so that it doesn't sound like AI does, because we've all read the ChatGPT stuff about game changers and delve into this and everything else that it would love to do. Talk to us a little bit about that process. Did you find as you trained it that it was able to pick up on some of those nuances, like you mentioned, like again, how it addressed in that message instead of saying I did this, but making it more about them? Was AI, and I'm assuming you're talking ChatGPT here, was it able to accommodate and make changes based upon what you did there?
Yeah, definitely. Almost every version 1.0 sucked. just so you guys know. So like refinement is part of the deal. I look at it just like an employee. Like those of you guys who ever hired before, like when you first start hiring people, like I experienced this a lot with VAs. In the beginning, you give them something and they come back and it's a mile away from whatever you had in mind. You're like, what the fuck is this? And you almost have to, like, as a boss, like fight the urge to not be an asshole in that moment because it's so far from what you intended. And over time, you realize that the problem is not the employee. The problem is your instructions are just not clear enough, and what you're really after is not clear enough. And you get a little bit better over time, and you refine it. And the more you do that process, eventually you can just show them, like, this is a picture of what I want. These are like the 3 steps I need you to fill in. Go take it and run, and they can go do it. And I find ChatGPT like a lot like that. It's trained in that sort of framework. And so for us, I had to break down our messages to like bullet points and then explain why I was doing each thing and what the relevant pieces were. So this is our subject lines we use, and this is why we use them. So it says like business name in brackets. So whatever that business name is, put it there, right? So, or, like, hey, we always mention something about them, personalized to them and them specifically. These are like 10 examples that we use, and all we're doing is we're either looking at their About Us page or their social page, and we're like personalizing these 2-3 sentences. If we give you the socials and we give you the About Us page, can you personalize based on these frameworks? And it took a little bit of iteration, but we're able to just give it the framework, and it goes and does it like perfect first time. Which I'm pretty impressed with, right? Like, especially the outreach messages of all the things that we're like building stuff. Some of them are like get you 90% of the way there. Like, I think they're not designed to get you all the way finished. Like, for example, I'm known as the Loom guy, close on video. But I actually think most of the work of closing on video for me has historically always been actually generating the slides to then record a 5-minute video. It's like the video itself you can make in 5 minutes, but getting the slides sometimes takes an hour, 2 hours. Or if you don't even know what you're going to say and you have to figure it out, it can take like days to figure out like, what goes in those sections. And now we have a thing that's programmed in like what it's supposed to be slide by slide. And so you just answer like a couple of questions and then it knows what to put in there and has suggestions. And again, it's not like 100% finished like, Magic Fairy does, but it gets you 90% of the way to the finish line in a button click. And then you're able to like, just tweak the slides a little bit and hit go. And so I don't know, we've just been playing with stuff. Like it's kind of amazing. But to your original question of like training it, to me, like I just found like the more I just took examples of what we wanted and put it in a Google Doc. This is how I work with real people. I remember years ago I was in a small like workshop with like 20 attorneys, and me and 2 other guys were leading the workshop. It was in Atlanta, I remember it, and we finished like a little bit early, and a lot of the attorneys said, I know like a lot of you guys like marketers just turn around and flip it on Fiverr, but I don't know how to hire stuff on Fiverr myself. Could you walk me through that? Because every time I do, it's junk. And so like I was like, let's take something really like low hanging fruit that's obvious. Is I can get a logo made, and back in those days, Fiverr was actually $5. But I was like, I can get a logo made for $5 and then turn around and sell it to you for like 1,000, and you'll give me $9.95 profit margin for just knowing how to hire this Fiverr guy. And they said, but I've done that and I only get crap. And I said, well, did you give them in like 3-4 examples of what you want your finished logo to look like, and say, I like these ones. Can you make it like this, but instead of there, that's blue? And as soon as they could show them an output of like, this is what I want, all of a sudden, like the Fiverr people now have like something to go on, right? Like if you just say, make me a logo, that's awesome. They don't know what awesome means to you. But if you say, I like these 3 logos, but I prefer this color blue instead of the purple they got, and I just a more readable font, can you do something like that? They can work off of that. And so ChatGPT is the same thing to me. Like it's just the more you can give it, like these are outputs that are working for us. Like then it can go, okay, I see what you're trying to do, and it does pick up those nuances.
I think that's so cool. Now, one of the questions I've got for you, Frankie, and I think I know the answer, but a lot of these sites you mentioned, going out looking at social media profiles and that, LinkedIn, for example, it blocks ChatGPT. We can't go scrape that just natively. What types of tools are you using? And you don't have to share all your secrets, but how are you getting AI to go scrape some of those social profiles when, again, LinkedIn in particular is blocking ChatGPT?
I honestly don't know. I just give it a bunch of links and it seems to figure it out. So
Okay, well, that's good. I love it. I love it. Now You've been using Perplexity a bit too, though. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. What tell us what are your thoughts on Perplexity? And are you using it on in conjunction with, or are you using like ChatGPT inside of Perplexity, or is it in your mind? Are you just kind of
Um,
brainstorming it?
I mean, we're just starting to get sophisticated enough. We're using Make and connecting those things. You've been telling me about that for a while, but I'm finally smart enough to listen to you. But for now, like, there still are some manual steps in there, but like what we're like doing for us for the most part is like automate those processes. But you mentioned this before, that when most people have AI, they try to go from here to final answer in a single prompt, and it just doesn't work like that
Yeah.
way. Like a book is a perfect example. Like I just wrote a book. I didn't actually write it with AI. I actually wrote the book, like, old school. But if you were trying to do a book, like, somebody would put in a prompt and say, like, give me a best-selling book, and you'd be shocked to find it won't do that. But if you say, hey, I want to write about this topic, can we sketch out a framework? And then you can say, can you reorganize those chapters? And then you say, okay, give me some bullet points on the first chapter. Can we talk about these 25 things? Now let's write the first chapter, and then like repeat that through the chapters. You'd actually get a pretty good output. And so I think one of the challenges, at least now, is I don't have a magic like wand that I can go just from like enter the prompt to best-selling book, but we have steps laid out, like do this thing on step 1, do this thing on step. So a lot of our stuff is still manual, but I don't know. We're building on that and seeing what's possible. We're testing something right now with a crypto project of ours where it's like, can we continuously post content in all the places it lets post content, like 24/7 on autopilot, based on fed all the information of like, these are the market pain points and needs, what our solution brings, and these are like the steps based on proven like sort of copywriting frameworks.
One of the things I love though about what you're doing, Frankie, and we talked about this as well, you're not just giving up because you tried once and it didn't work. I love your analogy of, it's like when you hire the new PA. If we just trusted that new employee, no matter what role there was on their first day performance, chances are 95% of the people we hired, we wouldn't keep on board because that first day sucks in most cases.
Yeah.
And that first interaction with AI often is really rough as well because, again, it doesn't work the way we want. You got to kind of prod and poke and test and try. I love just the way you've done things and pulled that together. From your perspective, where do you see this going in the future? You're already way ahead of what most people are doing. I mean, most people that I know are like, okay, I'll use it to write a social media post for me. Or,
Yeah.
maybe I can have it write an SOP, but they're not automating things and bringing it together. Where do you see all of that coming in with automations? And do you feel, I guess, automations and AI combined are going to be important as we go into
Yeah.
2025 and beyond?
Well, I don't necessarily have a crystal ball, so like I take any
Oh,
future
you do too. Come on,
with a grain of
Frankie.
salt, from me and from anyone, by the way. But I'll tell you things that I just see as trends that are kind of inevitable. One of those is, I think people who are producers of stuff, like you're a producer of stuff, you make content, you make consumables for people, you're even entertaining, which is amazing, way more entertaining than I am. But people who produce stuff, in many ways, this is the closest thing to a silver bullet you've ever been handed to in your lifetime. And there are no silver bullets, but this is the closest thing to it, where it like literally it can generate ideas for you. It can help you finish in those, like the speed at which it just increased your production and the amount of free help you just got that is accessible to anyone. It's like, I hate to quote ChatGPT, but it is a game changer. It really is.
Mm.
But the flip side of that is, I see on the end consumer side, like, it's inevitable that the introduction of AI is going to produce some, like, what a friend Lana calls infobesity, where like literally, I look at it like when I grew up, there were like 4 TV channels and we didn't even have cable. We had the bunny ears, so I was like, I hit my brother, Jordan, don't move, you got it. Like, that's how we watch it. There were only like 4 or 5 channels that came in, and so the amount of things that were pulling for our attention were small. Like now, I just look like, if I ever load up Netflix, like sometimes my kids and I will watch a movie, like holy, it takes me 45 minutes just to find a freaking movie to watch because there's like 1,000 of them, and that's just like one media, and then you multiply that, like Amazon's got stuff, and then there's YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So I see an inevitable, like, holy, like, consumers are going to be inundated. And if I had to make a prediction about it, it would be that people like you and I that are still like old fashioned and put their face on camera and make real will ultimately be, at least to a segment of the market, really exciting. And I compare that to, like, you and I are old enough to remember when the automated voice boards on the phone came out. Thank you for calling Jonathan Maston Associates. Your call is important to us. Press 1. Well, Jonathan and I were alive before that thing came out, and you could only get a human. And what happened is everybody was quick to shift over to it. And it only just made me appreciate the companies that still kept a human, because, like, press 1 for blah, blah, blah. Human, just give me a person. Like, I've heard at least 20 people in my life yelling at one of those automated things. Because they take forever, and they're just like, and you just get a sense of, like, they don't really give about you.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right. We Frankie, if you're on, we know we got to bleep a few things. It's just the way it goes.
But I was thinking that, like, the people who use AI but are also real people and not afraid to show themselves out there, I think, are the ones who are going to ultimately, like, have a real advantage. Because I've already seen it. Like, I follow like a poker channel on YouTube, for example, and they have all these short videos, and they're all this automated AI voice, and I'm starting, like, to not like it, and I see it, like, repeating, and it's like it's becoming boring to me. And that, to me, is the wrong way to use AI, to just, like, how do we make more faster? As where when you have good stuff and you're amplifying it, and a lot of that, like you said, is training it, like taking the time to make sure it understands what's good. And in our case, like, one of the things that I use, like, by the way, AI for me is, like, I write some really funny emails, and a lot of people don't know this, but if I ever write you a poem or a rap, I did not write that. I asked AI to write a rap poem. I just, like, took a post and then said, okay, can you make this a little funnier by turning it into a rose is red, violet is blue? That's why I'm writing you. Like one of those things. And that's all done by AI. And it's like I'm using it to enhance what I've already created and, like, make it more funny and more entertaining. But having said that, I don't know. I see those two waves where the producers just got handed the closest thing to a silver bullet, and those who know how to use it, well, but the consumer is now, like, it's going to 10x the amount of stuff they're going to see, and there's going to be, like, a serious, like, volume of low quality where people go, hey, let's just make more stuff faster.
I think you nailed it. I mean, it's like you said, it's making that process easier. But I also think, I just read a post today. Somebody's like, "Oh, AI is going to self-implode because it's being trained on its own data and blah 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 blah." And there's no need to pay any attention to it. I think AI brings with it a whole nother realm of opportunities, especially in the branding and the personal branding arena. Because if you are now authentic and you're using it, like you mentioned, I love that. It's not that you went to AI and said, "Write me this post and include a rap and do this and blah blah blah." You literally, you were the one that guided it up front. You were the one that said, hey, here's what I want. And now you're using AI to enhance and amplify your skill and experience. If I went and grabbed my 17-year-old or, one of your young ones, and we said, try to do the same thing, they couldn't replicate that because they don't have your skill. They don't have your experience for AI to draw upon. And I agree with you. So go ahead.
I just said, or my voice, which is like the genesis.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, and that's a whole nother area. I mean, now we've gotten to the point, I think you actually months ago, in fact, I bet it was almost a year ago, I won't name who it was, but you had sent me this testimonial, and it was a WAV file or an MP3 file. And you're like, look who just gave me a testimonial. And then you introduced me to 11 Labs, again, probably about a year ago, maybe even longer than that. And, you had literally been able to take that person's voice from some videos they'd done, train 11 Labs on how to do it, and then say, man, Frankie Finn is the most amazing digital marketer you've ever ran into, or whatever you said. It was super cool. But again, I'm going to
have fun with that, just, so, like, a couple mutual friends of ours, like Dennis Yu and Josh Nelson, I clone their voices and then, like, voice message them as themselves, but, like, talking about me.
Yeah, that was good. And Josh's is the one you sent me.
Yeah.
The part I think that just reinforces, though, is why it's so important as business people in particular that you develop a personal brand. You've got a very strong personal brand. I know what to expect when I'm hearing from Frankie, when I'm talking to you, whatever it is. You've got a very consistent and good brand out there that's a personal brand. So many people, I think, especially business owners, they fall back on the fact that they don't need a personal brand. And I think AI is actually making it even more important than it's ever been, that not only your business needs a good brand, but you as the owner need a solid personal brand in order to make sure that people know who you are and that they know what's authentic and everything else. What are your thoughts on that? That's something we've never really talked much about, but I'd love to hear
Well,
your thoughts.
I'll tell you a little bit about my motivation. I mean, I have a twofold motivation of like, for me, it's purposeful. I enjoy helping the people I do. So there's a reason why I put out like personal brand stuff. But there's also a flip side. Like there's a very selfish side of it. And I was thinking about it. There's a phenomenon that like exists in our society. I have a couple of friends who are like former pro athletes. And thankfully, they're not the ones I'm talking about. But there's like a type of like pro athlete or somebody who like literally makes tens of millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, and is broke like 3-4 years after they retire and like have to go back to like, you know, job with a bruised, banged up body, and they're working as a farmer or whatever. And I've seen this like athletes and celebrities and stuff where like it's a dark side of thing where they have a rapid onset of fame and money, and then a couple years later they're broke. And so I remember actually, like, as a real example of this, there's a guy in basketball, Antoine Walker. He signed a $110 million contract and was literally broke 3 years later. And there's another basketball player that everybody knows named Shaq. Even if you're not a basketball fan, I'm sure you know who Shaq is. And Shaq has an amazing personal brand. And he said something that was like really, really simple to me that like just made a lot of sense. He said, as long as I keep talking into a camera, like, opportunities and money and leads and things like that continue to show up. And I was like, it's really that simple, right? As long as you're creating and producing stuff, like you will have endless opportunities. You know, there are other challenges with having a lot of opportunities, like as I'm sure you know, John, I just get a lot of thrown my way, like in an average day, more than I can possibly like act upon. Like even if they were all good opportunities, I wouldn't have time to do them all, kind of thing. But I think like the real magic of a personal brand is it ensures that like if you enjoy having incoming like opportunities and ways to enhance people's lives, like they're going to be there. And I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I'm like, man, like why would you not want that? Like I hear so many people, especially entrepreneurs who are in business, who have their pipelines dry up and they struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure like Shaq has ebb and flow like we all do, but I doubt he's like worried tomorrow, like, you know, somebody will pay him for a speaking gig or an advertising or a commercial. Like there'll always be an opportunity because he has a personal brand. And so to me, like if you go the Antoine Walker way where you just kind of disappear and you don't build a personal brand and you're unknown, I'm not saying you're automatically going to go broke, but I bet you like opportunities don't just magically show up. As where if you're on Shaq and you're on video and you're sharing stuff. And for those guys who are introverts, you don't have to do it on video. I mean, there's books, there's podcasts, there's ways to contribute. There's software where you can build that helps people and you don't even have to be at all like a face of the thing, or, you know, there's lots of ways to help people. But I think the magic of a personal brand is that you essentially create an endless opportunity machine. And at least for me personally, it allows you to worry a lot less about the future because like I don't have to wonder where is tomorrow's business going to come from. You know, and I saw this, I have a friend of mine who runs a big annual conference in the legal space. And I watched his ascent because he was like a small company when we first started speaking together. And they're now approaching $100 million. When I met him, he was like doing like 200-300 grand. So like they were doing well, like don't get me wrong, like that's not nothing to scoff at. But like there's a big gap between like 200,000, 300,000 and 100 million. And I've seen him do this over 7-8 years. And now they have an event where they have in Atlanta, they have 20,000 people who like attorneys who come, and it's like they get who's who of names. And like one of the people he had like the 1 year I was talking to him was Gary Vee. And I was curious, like, how do you get Gary Vee to come to your event? He's like, oh, it's just like stoke a big check, basically. And I was like, how much is it? And he said it's 150 grand to get Gary Vee. And I remember I started daydreaming like, man, how cool would it be to have people just pay you 150 grand to just talk for an hour? Like that would be pretty cool. But then I thought about it and I was like, would you rather have 150,000 speak? Or would you rather have a personal brand like Gary has, where like literally he has endless $150,000 speaking? Like if he says no to that one, there'll be a new one tomorrow, and somebody will give him that opportunity. And so like to me, like that's able to pay for your life, your kids, your family, vacations, like all sorts of lifestyle. And so I don't know, I just see so many benefits to it, and it's a shame to me because so many people have so much to give, and the biggest reason they don't do it is because of all of these like internal things that don't really matter. Like my hair looks stupid today. I hate how my voice sounds on camera. I got a pimple. How could I possibly make a personal branding 30-second video if I got a pimple today. My voice is just shrieky. Nobody will want to listen to me. And it's really not about you. Like the sooner you realize, just pick a group of people and help them. Like most of the stuff you're going to say is about them and not about you.
Man, I want to say, if you're watching the podcast, go replay the last minute. Frankie, you just dropped so much gold there. You're right. It's not about you. It's not about what you look like. I mean, look, they watch me. I'm an old fat man with a beard, and people watch me. And I've built a business based on that. But just like you've done, and like you just said, add value to their life. Bring them value, and people don't care what you look like. They're not going to care what your voice sounds like. They're not going to care if you have a pimple. I had a bad hair today. You know what I do when I have a bad hair today? I put on a hat. It's simple. It's easy. Last night my wife's like, "You've got to get your hair cut before you do any more videos." I'm like, "No, I'll just put a hat on." Now I need to get my hair cut, but it's not going to be an excuse as to why I don't create a video today, because there's always a solution. And worst case, I take the hat off and I have bad hair. Big deal. At the end of the day,
and by the way, nobody's looking. Nobody cares.
Yeah, I say nobody cares. Well, there's too much bright shine up there anyway, so nobody can see it anyway. But you're right. Nobody cares. It's not what anybody matters about.
Yeah.
No, true growth. And again, kind of bringing it full circle, I think AI now makes it easier for us, especially if we go back, train it like we were talking about, to give that ability to go in and have AI understand who you are. And now it can help you create better content that is more helpful to your audience. I know, as an entrepreneur, probably like many that Frankie, I have lots of ideas, but I oftentimes don't get them implemented because either one, another bright, shiny object comes into my view before I get a chance, or I simply run out of time in the day. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. I can have an idea, and in many times, I can go implement that within minutes, or at least make enough progress that I can hand it off to my team, in which case things now get done that never used to get done because we ran out of time. And they are getting done because I'm leveraging AI in the process. I'm going to AI and saying, help me with this, or do an outline. I've got a course I'm doing today, a coaching class, and I needed an outline for it. The outline I had, but then I needed a handout for teaching something. So I uploaded a video that I did and said, read the transcript and turn this into a standard operating procedure that I can share as part of this course. And what would have even taken my assistant a few hours to do, literally I had done with AI in under 5 minutes by just uploading a transcript of a video where I described how to do it about a month ago, turned that into a document. I made a couple quick formatting changes, and boom, it's done in 5 minutes. And in the past, that would have been the thing that just never got done. It would have had an intention. I wanted to do it, didn't get around to it. Like me, thought of it last minute. My course is launching in 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I thought of it just before this call. It's just giving you that ability to take that and amplify what you're doing. So
I'll tell you, like, one little use that we did that's like really similar to that is like I probably spend like my social media bad habit of like when I'm doing like just pointless scrolling is YouTube. I like watching like stupid cooking shows and old wrestling videos and stuff like that. And I started in the last like month or whatever, just paying more attention to like thumbnails that I thought were catchy, and I clicked on like different like channels and I looked at their top performing ones, and I just like took a document, I put, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 of them or something like that in there. And then I did a little research on articles that were talking about like really catchy thumbnails that like worked. And a lot of the articles were like really generic and boring, but there were like 3-4 good ones that I really liked. And so I told ChatGPT, like, these are the thumbnails I like. These are the 3-4 articles that describe it. Can you create a prompt so that we can create these YouTube thumbnails on demand with all the principles of these things? It wrote the prompt, and then we tested the prompt, and it was like, holy shit, we can generate cool thumbnails in seconds. But it started with, like that manual thing. But I'm with you now. Like, we can give a VA, and they can create awesome thumbnails like clockwork, like super fast.
It just reminds me so much of what you said early on, Frankie. When we have somebody new start, if we don't give them any perspective, we don't give them any training, we can't expect we're going to get good quality work out of them. And AI is really no different. It's an employee that's working for us, but we need to train it, just like you did with the thumbnails. give it the thumbnails that were good, have it do the research, figure out what makes a good thumbnail, and then go from there. I do that with most of my social posts now. I spent a long time evaluating great social media posts that resonated with the people they were posted for, that got the interactions, that got the comments, that got the views, and then we distilled that down and we trained an AI model how to do that combined with my personality, my tone and style. And now when I have an idea for a social media post, instead of me sitting in front of my computer staring at it blankly, I can go to ChatGPT or Claude and I can give it that topic and I can get a great, engaging, generally 99% of the way their social media post in seconds. And like you said, it's because I took the time to train it up front. Had I not done that, I'd get, crap like everybody else gets out and tries to post. So
Yeah, and can I
great
just say
advice.
I relate to that? Because like when I
Yeah.
first got out of the box, everybody told me it was the latest, greatest thing, and I wrote a couple articles and blog posts, and then I didn't touch it for like months because like this is like none of this is any good. It just wrote flowery garbage, as many people would like delve into, and like you
Yes,
mentioned, everything's
exactly.
a game changer, and here's the kicker, and all the like the kind of words it would use, and it just sounded long and flowery. Like I'd spent years training myself to write like a copywriter with short, punchy sentences that were easy to read for people, and now it's writing like again like a college educated and like kind of boring style of writing in my opinion, and I was like, no, I don't like that, so I stopped using it. But then once I realized that like it was me in the way I was giving it information or not providing it, like as you would call context,
Mm.
and training, whatever, like information about like what we really consider to be a good output, it wasn't very useful. But like once you figure that out, like it's like it really is a game changer. Anything you do that's repetitive and repeatable, it can do 100,000 times faster than you ever could. Like for us, like we
Mm.
make a thumbnail like a couple times a week, every week. So we just saved ourselves an hour of trying to figure them out every week, and now we can just go, here's the video, what it's about, like this is what works, give us some thumbnail ideas, and then it actually like prints out a suggestion, and we're still recreating them in Canva manually, but like it's a 5-minute task, not a 2-hour task now.
Well, and I think you're making a really important point, and that's it. So many people with AI, they think we're going to take a 2-hour task and alleviate it. We're not. We're going to take a 2-hour task and make it into maybe a 5, a 10, a 15, maybe a 30-minute task. But if I have multiple tasks that I can do for me and my team every day or every week and turn those 2-hour tasks into 30-minute tasks, I'm
Yeah.
still saving an hour and a half every single time we have to touch that. And like with thumbnails, let's say you're doing 3 a week. Well, now all of a sudden, I just save 4 to 5 hours for somebody on my team that they can either focus on other things, do a better job on something they're trying to skim over right now, or for that matter, take a extra 15-minute coffee break and enjoy life. It's all
Yeah.
good from my perspective.
Yeah.
So
Can I
I get,
also add too, like
please.
some of us like me are like super anal about details. Like I want my thumbnails done right because I know how much they matter, and like how much you either get or don't get views based on thumbnails. And so like it's a detail that for me has to be right. And when you're like an employer, for example, of other people and you're super anal, a lot of times it can be very difficult to let go. But when you've properly trained the AI and it's doing it your way repeatedly, it's very easy to not only let that task go, but like delegate it completely to a virtual assistant or somebody like that who can do it for you, because you're like, hey, just follow this AI process and you'll be able to create the thumbnails that we need.
One of the things I love to ask everybody, and I know you're not doing AI consulting, but if you had a business owner or an agency owner come to you, let's have an agency owner, 'cause you get that world, and said, Frankie, I want to start using AI, but I don't know where to start. What would you recommend they do in the first, we call this the 91 day, AI podcast on purpose, but what would you recommend in the first 3 months that they focus on with AI? You obviously can't do everything day one. Where should that agency start? What should they do? Or that entrepreneur, what should they focus on in the first 3 months to gain some traction, to gain some trust in AI and how they can use it? Any thoughts on what you might recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the same answer for everybody, but like to give an answer I think is most useful is like I think like where I would start is not with the AI tool, but is taking inventory on my time. So I just start to pay attention to like what's taking a whole lot of time. And if it's email for you, then the first thing I'd want to do is train it on how to respond to emails like me. And so I'd start building a library of like every time I reply to an email and have a question, I would take the initial request and my response and put that into a document and begin to build a library of like, here's how I respond to email, until you got like 50 or 100 of them. And now you can say to AI, this is how I like to respond to email. And again, like, you don't think about this as a magic bullet that's supposed to get you 100% of the way to the finish line. Rather, you can just push a button and get 95% of the way there. Now you just, every time you respond to an email, you just saved yourself like a massive amount of time of like, because you're probably answering the same stuff over and over. It's like just variations of the same kind of questions, topics, themes, things like that. Or, you know, if like in my case, like a lot of times people are drowning in this fulfillment, like they're trying to set up Facebook ads and stuff like that. Like the more you can start documenting those processes, you can train it on that. Or if you're spending a lot of time like saying creating content to try and like drum up business or whatever, like take note of what's working there and start training it on those things. And you do this, like, to me, you don't do this as a separate task. You do it simultaneous to what you're doing. So like if I found out a lot of my time was creating social media content, then every time I create a piece of content, I just remember, like, if I like this one, if this is one of the ones that worked, make sure to like put it into a library. And so it's not like a giant, like all extra work, but if you do that, what'll happen is anywhere over like 3 days to a month, you're going to have like a pretty good library of things. And to me, the things that come up naturally are the 80-20 of it anyway, because those are
Yes.
the things that are all your time. And then start to bring AI to assist you with that. Like, don't think about it again as a silver bullet of like, it's going to write all my emails for me and I never have to touch my inbox again. But rather, it's like, man, like, it kind of knows the gist of what I'm trying to say. And so it can get that right away. And maybe I might change, you know, dear Mrs. Jones to whatever. But like, for the most part, like, it can greatly speed up like the repetitive stuff. And unlike employees, you know, somebody mentioned this, I think it was Jeff Hunter, never rolls its eyes at you. Never says I'm busy today. Never says I'm sick. Never, if you ask it to rewrite it, it doesn't go, really? You want me to rewrite it again?
Yeah,
yes,
no deep sighs.
Rewrite it again, you know? And so that's the other thing is like, you know, when you need to like update it and do revisions, what'll happen is if you practice with it, you'll just get a lot faster and a lot more efficient. And what you'll find is if you do that long enough, for just like you said, like 90 days, you'll free up like 50-60% of the time you were spending before, and all of a sudden you'll have space for creative outlet. For me, I call those like flow states, where I can just like think about what I want to build and kind of like create without interruptions and things like that. Like, I wrote a book. It's hard to write a book if you got to answer calls and do emails and talk about thumbnails and things like that. If you don't have uninterrupted time where you can just write, it's hard to write a book, right? So to me, that's the real benefit, is that the important things get done way faster and you can spend more time like thinking about big picture stuff, or like having nothing to do with business, just hanging with your kids and family, because all the things you needed to get done, you did way faster. And the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is you're rewarded for productivity. Like if you figure out an 8-hour task and condense it down to 8 minutes, like, there's no rule that says you got to work another 7 hours and 52 minutes, right? Like, you don't have to sign up for that if you don't want to.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So you talked about the new book as we get ready to bring the plane in for a landing here. 2 things. One, if people want to reach out, learn more about you, Frankie, what's the best way for them to do that? And then tell us about the book, because by the time this goes live in about a week, the book will be out. Tell us about the book and how people can get access to that if they're interested.
Yeah, can I give 2 shout outs to the book? Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you guys who are agency owners, or really anybody who's like in an expertise business, honestly, if you're a coach or a consultant, you still get a lot out of it. You can go to beyondtheagencybox.com, and that is my first book. It is not necessarily like a New York Times bestseller, but it's been on those top 100 business books for a while now, for like a good couple of years. And you can see more about that. And then the new book, which will be out by the time you guys are watching this, is called Passive Automated Recurring Income: The Art of Do Once and Get Paid Again and Again, which is, like I said, a mantra that's kind of like changed my life from years ago. And I hope to be able to do that for you guys as well. You can find that on Amazon. The old Amazon will be available. Once again, it'll be called Passive Automated Recurring Income.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm excited to get my copy. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've read a bunch of it because I wrote you a testimonial for it. It's amazing. So
yes,
but I want to get the official copy I can put behind me on the bookshelf. So that'll be way cool. I'm excited about that. Frankie, thank you for spending the time with us today. I always enjoy chatting with you, as not a big
Amen.
surprise there. So looking forward to hanging out with you in the Baja or wherever it is that you technically live in January. when
Yeah.
we do that, that's going to be a fun event. Looking forward to it. And I want to thank all of you guys for listening. I welcome you and appreciate you listening to the 91 Day AI Transformation Podcast. I'm thrilled that you hung out with us. We'd love your feedback. If you like this episode, you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. That matters a lot. And if you want us to make changes, we'd love to hear from you as well. So with that, everybody, make it a great day. Thank you so much. Frankie, thank you again.